Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell you scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse wherever you stream podcasts. Just be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. If you're listening to this, you likely know today is Friday the 13th, and it's the second one of 3 this year. For many, Friday the 13th is a day of superstition and fear. But for those of us in the horror community, it's not an unlucky or cursed day. Instead, it's a time to be a fan of all things spooky, scary, weird, and strange. For us, it's not about superstition. It's about celebrating the things we enjoy. And today, I'm bringing you my first Friday the 13th special, where I tell you a collection of scary stories covering ghostly sightings, Ouija Board horror stories, and more. In this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're going to explore the scariest stories out there. So sit back, turn down the lights, pull up the covers, crank up the volume, and pay close attention as we dive into our Friday the 13th special. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. Story 1. My mom's whole side of the family was raised Catholic. All went to the same church in a small town in the South. I was there one summer as a kid with my mom. I was maybe like 10 years old. My uncle's farmland backs right up to the church. Anyway, things hadn't been going so well with the farm. Crops were not growing right. Healthy animals were randomly dropping dead. Chickens and small creatures showed up gutted even though we had a donkey to protect the cattle. Just weird shit that's never happened before. So one day, the adults were acting super weird and cagey. You know how they act when something big is going down but they don't want to scare the kids. Like that. My grandma, mom, uncle, aunt, some older cousins, and the priest and another man from the church were all hanging out on my uncle's farm when they basically kicked me out of the house to go play. Naturally, I was a very curious kid, so I climbed as high as I could in the nearest tree to the house, trying to eavesdrop. I heard a snippet of conversation here and there, but couldn't figure out what they were up to. After a few minutes, everyone left the house, following the priest to the barn, stables, and chicken coop. The entire time I was watching from the tree. While they were all down at the stables, I heard the door to the house open, and a woman I'd never seen before, maybe 30 years old with brown hair and a blue dress, casually walked out of the door. She briefly looked up at me in the tree, so I waved. She ignored me and walked off down the dirt road. Alright then. Once the adults were done with whatever they were doing, we all gathered in the dining room of my uncle's house to have some lemonade my aunt made because it was such a warm day. I decided to pipe up and ask them who the woman in the blue dress was, since I'd never seen her visit before. Every adult in the room freaked out. My aunt started crying. The priest looked like he might barf, and I was told the woman was just visiting. Okay, fine. A decade later, my uncle finally told me that the woman I saw was an apparition that had started appearing to parishioners at the church and next door on my uncle's land. They assumed she was a lost spirit trying to pass on, but after she attacked the priest at his house, which was also nearby, and farm animals started showing up dead, They decided she was some sort of demon who appeared as a young woman to hide her true nature. The day I saw her from the tree, the adults had gotten permission from the Catholic Church to perform an exorcism on my uncle's land. It appears I had witnessed her leaving. I do wonder where she was going. I'm 26 years old today, and the story of Evelyn, as the parishioners started calling her after she was spotted inside the church, still gives me goosebumps. She was completely expressionless when she looked up at me in that tree, and she didn't seem to be in any hurry to leave either. The moment she was gone, the crops started recovering and we stopped finding dead and eviscerated livestock. I'm not religious, and I'm generally a pretty big skeptic, but I'll never be able to explain what I saw from the oak tree that day. Story 2. I'm a lover of horror, supernatural, and creepy things. I spent a lot of my teens and childhood ghost hunting with my friends in random graveyards, run-down neighborhoods, abandoned factories, etc. That said, we never really encountered anything other than psychosomatic ghosts that our overactive imagination created. Despite loving horror, I didn't really believe that any sort of corporeal ghosts were real. When I was 15, I traveled to Europe with my family. We stayed in Germany in a small inn for a few nights. My parents had a double on the second floor. My sisters had the double bedroom next to theirs, and I was lucky enough to have a single room all to myself at the far end of the hall. When we went to check into our rooms, as soon as I entered the hallway our rooms were in, I remember almost feeling as though I walked into a wall of bad energy. I just felt so unnerved and uneasy in that hallway, but I passed it off as an overactive imagination. I slept the first night without any issues other than waking up a few times. The next morning at breakfast, one of my sisters mentioned feeling really uncomfortable in the hallway, almost as if the air was crushing. It unnerved me even more that I wasn't the only one who felt weirded out. Plus, she was an adult at the time, so it further cemented in my head that that wing of the hotel was odd. Later that night, I was sleeping peacefully, when at about 2 a.m., I was awoken by something ripping the covers off of me and being jerked about 2 feet towards the end of the bed by my ankle. At first, I thought someone had broken into my room, because when I turned towards what had grabbed me, a huge looming black shape was visible in the darkness, like a man was in my room. I frantically flipped the light on, only to have there be nothing there. The window was locked from the inside. There was no one in the closet or the bathroom, and my room was also still locked from the inside. I stayed up the rest of the night scared shitless, playing Cooking Mama on my DS. Next morning, we're at breakfast and my sister mentions that she was up half the night because she thought she saw a person silhouetted against the wall of the room. But when she turned on the light, there was no one there. It was just a bizarre and creepy experience. We checked out that day, so I didn't get to experience anything after that. But it still freaks me out to this day. Story 3. If you hear stories about Greyfriars Kirkyard in Edinburgh, Scotland being haunted, I advise you to believe them. I was visiting the city with my boyfriend, and we decided to take one of the haunted walk tours. Our guide was excellent. She was dressed in all black, very gothic, and was clearly a talented actress. Being 6 foot and 5 foot 10 inches tall, we towered over the 2 other couples and the 2 hen parties that were on the tour with us. Out of respect for them, we stood in the back of the group. When we arrived at the Covenanters prison, worth a Google search by the way, I thought our tour guide was laying it on wonderfully thick. She seemed genuinely concerned for our safety. She discussed how people got pushed, pulled, and scratched, and she told us that there was no shame in wanting to leave. If we got scared, she would lead us out. Except, we were having a great time. But then, something yanked on the back of my hair. My boyfriend saw me jerk back and we both spun around. Remember, we were at the back of the group, so there was no one behind us. The hair pull was impressively strong, and honestly, it scared the shit out of me. We continued into a crypt in the Covenanters' prison. Again, we were at the back of the pack, but this time I was a little less happy about it. While our guide talked, I felt another tug on my hair. This one was much weaker than the first, so I could have just caught my hair on my jacket or purse. Still, I was pretty freaked out. Some of the girls from one of the hen parties were pretty inebriated. One girl was standing in front of us, and I remember thinking she was really brave to wear white pants and a yellow t-shirt to the muddy cemetery on a rainy day. Out of nowhere, she started jerking her right knee forward at an odd angle. After a few times of doing this, she turned around to face us and yelled, "Stop fucking kicking me." Shit. My boyfriend and I looked at each other and at the other people standing beside and slightly in front of us. None of us were anywhere near her. Now this girl was pretty intoxicated, so while I was already freaked out, I was prepared to disregard her. That is, until the last kick. I was watching her leg, and clear as day, she bent her knee forward and gasped, and I saw a muddy footprint appear on the back of her pants. Remember, they were bright white, and we all confirmed after the fact that it was a footprint. We could even distinguish the toes. At this point, I grabbed onto my boyfriend for dear life and held on until the guide was done talking. As soon as she was done, the other couple joined us in running out of that crypt. We all chatted with our tour guide and a couple of her coworkers for a while. She told us that our experience is pretty standard there, and that she wasn't acting when she warned us. Story 4. One time I was dating this girl, and during one of our first times hanging out, we decided to watch Paranormal Activity. I forget which one of us suggested it, but we thought that trying to use a Ouija board would be a cool experience. So the next day, she bought one and invited me over. We tried messing around with it, but at first had no luck. The little plastic thing, which I learned was called a planchette, was moving, though at this point I figured it was all her just fucking with me. But the words that it tried to spell out made no sense. Anyways, after playing with the Ouija board, we started to watch some YouTube videos and realized the planchette that came with the game didn't have a hole in the center, which is where the letters it was trying to show us would appear. We actually thought the tip of the planchette is where we were supposed to look. So instead, we decided to use a shot glass. The second time we started playing, words started to slowly form, and it told us about some house where it and other spirits lived, and that the owner of the home was disturbing them by trying to get rid of them all. It gave us a phone number, and this girl actually called it. I have to admit, at this point, I thought she was really trying to fuck with me, and taking this really far. But honestly, I was really into her, and just decided to go along with it. This went on for 3 or 4 days until I finally became a believer. She asked the board who our guardian angels were. Listen, it spelled out my mother's name. Listen, it spelled out my mother's name, who had passed away at a young age and who the girl I was dating didn't know about. Now it was her turn. It wrote her grandfather's name, but honestly, she had no idea who it was. It was sort of a long-lost grandfather who she had never met. Apparently he had passed long before she was born, due to cancer, and no one in her family ever spoke about him. I thought that was weird as hell. The board also wrote my best friend's name, who had passed away from suicide a few years back. It's almost impossible that she would know about this. Remember, we had just started dating. We did have some common friends though, and so it's possible she might have known from them. Anyway, the board wrote out his name under an alias only a handful of people knew, which were our gamer nicknames. Both of these names blew me away. There was no way that she could have known this, so how the hell could this happen? Anyway, we decided to call it a night. The next day, she calls and tells me that the lights in her apartment were turned on, but I convinced her perhaps she forgot to turn them off. The day after that, she texted me in the morning saying she turned the lights off and is now getting ready to leave for work. I pick her up from work and we go back to her place together. And sure enough, the lights are on. She then asks me to sleep over because she's spooked and scared to death. That night, I heard what seemed to be cups moving slowly in her cupboards. The toilet seat sort of slammed down, and later on, the shower head dropped a bunch of leftover water into the bathtub, kind of like when you shake it after taking a shower. I was pretty fucking scared. The next morning, we used the Ouija board again, and it told us that there was a new spirit around us, and it was trying to harm us. For some reason, the girl decided to ask it whether it knows when we'll die. It tells me I'll die sometime in my 80s, while it tells her that she's scheduled to die within the next few months. She finally decided to shut this shit down and put the board away, and she proceeded to tell me about a terrible assault she'd experienced the winter before, and how the two guys who did it left her for dead, lying in the snow in a rural area. She managed to make it to a farmer's house, where she called the cops. There was a court date set, and friends of these two guys who assaulted her were calling her, threatening her that if she testified, they'd find her and hurt her. Eventually, not long after, she and I stopped dating. I ended up seeing her 2 years later working at the mall, so I guess the Ouija board lied or was simply mistaken. To this day, though, I don't know what to think of that experience. Maybe she made part of it up, but I still can't explain how that board was able to spell my grandfather and best friend's name. We'll continue right after this quick ad break. Story 5. It's important to start by saying I'm a firm believer in the occult and believe in a higher power, ghosts, and the supernatural. At the time, I had collected a few Ouija boards and was really into trying to speak to the dead. After several months of feeling like I was a medium, I was starting to feel off. I was having horrendous thoughts that were very out of character for me. I won't go into detail, but they were dark and disturbing. And there were other things. I felt so bad that my hands were bleeding because I could not stop washing them. The guilt I felt from those thoughts were taking me over, and I thought I was going insane. It was around this time that I knew I needed to have a conversation with my mom about what was happening. So I told her everything, and she told me I needed to see a doctor. So I did. A week or so after confiding in my mom, I went and saw our family doctor. At 16, I was terrified of the idea of being mentally ill. I nervously told the doctor everything I had been feeling, and he filled out a prescription for Prozac and recommended I see a psychiatrist. I took the papers he gave me and shrugged home. Afterwards, I told my mom what the doctor said and started to plan my road to recovery. A few days later, while researching some stuff about Ouija boards and trying to take my mind off things, I came across an article about something called demonic oppression. Holy fuck. This was me. This was the definition of what was happening to me. My symptoms were all on par with what the article was referencing. Basically, it's the idea of not being possessed and having a demon in you, but the idea of one being around you trying to bring you down as much as possible. And it can lead to demonic possession. The number one way to stir a demon to start oppressing you? Playing with Ouija boards. I then began researching how to be rid of this hypothetical oppression. It said to get rid of your Ouija boards and make sure to dispose of them correctly. So I began to do so. I broke the board and separated the pieces and made sure they never touched when I was disposing of them, and I separated the planchettes as well. I put all of it in separate bags, and it sat in our garbage for a day or so. After what seemed like forever, garbage day rolled around, and I heard the truck outside around the corner making its stops. Shit, I forgot I had kitty litter stuff to throw out as well, so I ran downstairs and headed to the front door. My dad stopped me at the bottom of the stairs and proceeded to mock me for having to clean up cat shit. I ignored him, didn't make eye contact as he was annoying me, and full on laughing at me at this point. I darted past and threw the shit into our garbage bin and waited to see the Ouija board bags being put into the garbage truck. When I entered the house, it was quiet. I yelled to my dad, except he didn't answer. 15 seconds or so go by, and my mom came in from work. She says hello, and I asked her where Dad went. She tells me he hasn't gotten home from work yet, and that he had to pick something up from the grocery store on his way. I told her he must have forgotten to stop on the way home, because I just spoke to him in person like 2 minutes ago. She said that's impossible, because she was just talking to him on the phone. I ran to a phone and called him, and sure enough, he's still at the grocery store and totally confused with what I was talking about. I hung up in complete shock. No one else was home, and it 100% looked and sounded like my dad. I know that what was oppressing me was enjoying what it had just done to me. After the boards were thrown away, all my symptoms stopped overnight, but I'm still scared to think of what I might have seen had I looked my father in the eyes that day. Story 6. One day, my partner got the idea to buy a Ouija board and use it with a few friends. I wouldn't say we were complete skeptics, but I don't think any of us were really expecting anything wild to happen. We went online and looked up how to safely use one, and planned out what kind of questions we should ask. We didn't really want to use it at our house, so we gathered up a couple friends and I drove to a state park a few towns over. We started to head up the hiking trail to find a good spot to lay the board down, and once there, we began going through the motions of asking if there was a spirit who would like to communicate with us. The planchette moved with ease. It was a really strange, powerful feeling when it glided across the board. The planchette it came with was a thick hunk of plastic, and there was quite a bit of friction when trying to intentionally move it on the board. So we were a bit stunned when the damn thing started working. We asked the spirit if it was a good spirit. Of course, the planchette moved over to no. We then asked if it wanted to harm us, and the planchette moved over to yes. My partner asked how it would go about doing this, and the board began spelling out E-N-G-I-N-E, engine. We saw a group of hikers coming up in our general direction, and we carelessly put the board away without properly saying goodbye. Within a few minutes, we hiked down to another secluded area and decided to try again. This time, we came into contact with a spirit who claimed to be a 6-year-old boy who died sometime in the 1800s. The spirit seemed nice at first, until he told our friend he wanted him to die so he could have someone to play with. We decided to ask the board questions only we would know the answers to. We agreed that each person would take turns asking a question, and while doing so, would not have their hands on the planchette just to be safe. Listen, the board got every damn question correct, and that's when I started to feel a bit uneasy. I honestly couldn't believe it. The board then proceeded to spell out my name, and I really wasn't sure why. Soon after, it began to rain, so we told the board that we had to go and asked it to help us bring the planchette down to goodbye. It complied. After we were done, we all began walking back to my car when I noticed this woman sitting in an SUV next to mine, watching us. Her gaze never really left, and it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. We all got in my car and I got it to start, but the engine didn't turn over. It was almost as if the battery was dead, but my accessories still worked. I began to shit bricks. I hadn't had my car for very long and it never gave me trouble. It seemed like way too big of a coincidence. I looked over at that woman and put my window down, and asked her if she had jumper cables. She reached behind her and pulled them out, as if she had them ready to go. We got out of my car and hooked them up, when one of our friend's phones rings from a number he doesn't recognize. He picked it up, and it was someone just asking if we were okay. He chalked it up to the fact that a drug dealer previously had the number, so he got a lot of unknown calls. Weird. We started chatting with the woman and thanked her for letting us use the jumper cables. It turned out she has the same name as me, which the board had previously spelled out, perhaps a warning. She told us that she worked as an ultrasound technician at a local hospital and that she has cancer in young children. We asked her what she was doing in the parking lot, to which she explained she was waiting for her weed dealer. Medical marijuana is legal in my state, so I was a bit perplexed, but didn't think anything of it. I was just grateful she was helping us out. I went to try and start my car, and it turned over, but within a few seconds it stopped working. It just kind of rolled for a few feet in the parking lot before shutting off entirely. At this point it was getting dark, and I began to come to terms with the fact that I'd have to call a tow truck. Our friends ended up getting picked up, and my partner waited with me as we waited for the tow truck to arrive. We told the woman she could leave, since she was still weirdly waiting with us. She offered for us to sit in her car while we wait, because it was raining again, and we didn't have any heat or air. I asked her if she could pop the trunk so I could sit on the ledge, but she told me the trunk didn't open. So stupidly, I got in the car with her with my partner. The weird woman made a joke about disabling her child safety locks in the back, so I won't think she's trying to keep us here. That rubbed me the wrong way, and she told me that I should just maybe leave my car there, and offered to give us a ride home. I politely declined. Then she told me that she has a friend whose husband works for VW, and he could surely fix my car for a good price. She called up her friend, and because we were in the car, it was quiet enough that my partner and I could faintly hear the other line. She explained the car problem and asked how much it would be to fix it. We heard on the other line the person ask if I was a boy or a girl. The woman says girl, and the man on the line simply said, "Good." Nope. We got out of the car and told her the tow truck should be there soon and thanked her for her help. We gave her the Ouija board and told her she could keep it because we didn't want it anymore. I still wonder what she did with it. She kept trying to give me her phone number and kept saying she would come with me to get my car fixed from her friend. Eventually, she fucked off. We ended up getting back home late. I told the AAA guy how we were fucking around with a Ouija board and met the weird lady afterwards. He said he wouldn't have picked us up if he had known that. The next day, my partner opened his text that he sent out while we were waiting for the tow. In a conversation with his mother, the text box read, "Yes, Satan, yes," written out. The message wasn't sent, but he sure as hell didn't write that. The next day, I called the hospital to see if that woman even worked there, like she had claimed. Nope. They transferred me to 2 different floors, and there was no ultrasound technician working there with my name. I still don't know how to explain what happened that night, and I'm sure as hell never using a Ouija board again. Also, the dealer the woman claimed to be waiting for never even showed up. So, what was she doing that night, and what were her intentions? I'll never know. We'll continue right after this quick ad break. Story 7. Our family had a very bad experience with previous tenants who admitted to using a Ouija board in the house before we moved in. First off, I'm going to throw a caveat out. This story is true. I haven't embellished it, which makes it even more creepy. And everyone in my family who visited us while living in this house backs it up. Sorry, the story is a bit long, but a lot went on. I hope you packed a lunch. It all goes back to about 1982 to 1985. I was but a 3 to 5 year old, and I have a sister who was 1 year younger, and my parents had just moved into a house in Brisbane. My dad was a journalist. He's now passed away, and my mother was a midwife who at this stage had taken some time off to be at home with us. The house itself was a single story at the front and went into a double story at the back. The front of the house had the living room and my room, while the back of the house was joined by a carpeted landing with stairs that went up to a master bedroom on the left, a nursery straight ahead, and a bathroom to the right. At the bottom of the stairs was a side door leading onto an entertainment barbecue area with the backyard out the back. If you turned right at the base of the stairs and didn't go out the side door to the concrete entertainment area, you would pass under an arch frame that led into a large L-shaped concrete rumpus room under the house. Inside the L-shaped rumpus room and under the stairs above was a dark tiled laundry. At the back of the rumpus room was another back door leading directly out to the backyard. Got me so far? Good. Here we go. Dad would often work late at night, so he was barely home. Do the math on that one and work out why they later divorced. So Mom was often left in this house at night with my brother and sister for company. Mom said the first thing she noticed after a month or two of living there was that our old dog Mandy would refuse to enter the house and spent all of her time in the backyard in her kennel. Apparently, if Mom was bringing in the washing, the dog would happily follow up until the back door. But as soon as she reached the back door, her tail would drop and she would start whimpering. Mom thought it was odd, but nothing more got said. She put it down to the dog being the dog. Then weirder things started happening. The laundry would flood for no reason, with adjacent rooms left completely dry. Mom and Dad would walk down to the back of the house to find light bulbs shattered from their sockets. Mom said she absolutely detested walking in the back of the house at night, as she said that as soon as she entered the stairway landing area, her hairs would stand on end. She told me it felt like someone was watching me as I walked past or on the stairs. As you can imagine, checking on my baby sister at night soon became an event to dread, when ordinarily she would have been happy to do so. The weirdness continued. However, it started to ramp up over a few months when Mom and Dad said they used to hear shuffling feet coming from the rumpus room below when they would be lying in bed at night. Often Mom said she would be knitting or watching TV at the front of the house by herself, only to hear laughter coming from the back of the house. She'd get up to check, but of course I would be asleep and nothing would be there. One night, my aunt and my 18-month-old cousin came to stay a while my dad and my uncle painted my grandmother's lounge room walls one night after work. My mom and aunt had both chatted about their babies, me being a toddler and my sister a year younger. And my aunt mentioned that my cousin was currently going through teething and was spending some nights crying. This night in particular, my cousin was in a little bit in pain, so my mother volunteered to drive down to the local pharmacy and pick up some teething gel to help numb the pain, as we had recently run out. My mother said to my aunt, "Look, Jenny, I think there is something wrong with the house, but Phil, my dad, doesn't believe me, so I'm just warning you. If you hear something, I want you to let me know." My aunt replies, "What do you mean?" My mother says, "Well, I've been hearing some weird things that I really can't explain, and frankly, I'm a little bit scared." My aunt responds, "Oh, rubbish. I'm a very spiritual person and I have been in a friend's house that was apparently haunted, and I picked up on it, and I can tell you there is nothing wrong with this house." My mom says, "Oh, okay, well, I just wanted to let you know. I'll be back in about 20 to 30 minutes anyway, so I'll see you soon." My mom got back from the pharmacy to find my uncle's car in the front of our house, and she sensed something wasn't right. She walked in to find my sobbing aunt trying to be consoled by my uncle, while my dad was poking fun at her. My dad said, "Did you get spooked, Jen?" Mom replies, "You heard something, didn't you?" My aunt then says, "After you left, I could feel thumps going through the floorboards and something calling my name and laughing from the back of the house. This house is bullshit." Petrified, my mom tried to find out what was causing this. She eventually chatted with a neighbor who said that the previous renter went a bit crazy and then went downhill after a messy divorce. She got into some weird religion and often would have people come by the house every few weeks where they would hold seances in the house. At this stage, my mom was a churchgoer, and she said she felt a shiver go up her spine as she started realizing what may have been an explanation for what was going on. It turned out the woman was a Satanist. Mom asked, "Where did they used to hold these seances? Do you know?" The neighbor replied, "Oh, we used to see them put candles in the rumpus room downstairs, so they used to hold them in there, I'm pretty sure." Needless to say, Mom was determined to move out from that point forward. Dad, of course, really didn't believe her, so they were staying put, as he didn't feel the need to move. Needless to say, despite all our toys and bikes being in the rumpus room, Mom said I would never play down there. She had just put it down to kids not wanting to leave their mother's feet at such a young age. My older cousin, who was about a year older than me, flatly refused to go down to the rumpus room when she visited. She told my aunt and mom that things down there spooked her out. A few more months went by, and apparently I started complaining to my mom of a man who sat on top of my wardrobe, looking at me at night. She got rid of the wardrobe almost immediately. A few weeks later, when she was getting changed in her room at the top of the house, I was down at the front of the house watching Sesame Street. She went to leave her room and found the door was locked. She started shaking the doorknob, but it refused to open. She called out to me, but I wouldn't have heard her. At the time, she was 7 months pregnant with my baby brother, who is 4 years younger than me. And at this stage, she was forced to shimmy down the drain pipe and onto the side entertainment area. She came back up through the side door, up the stairs, only to find her bedroom door wide open and unlocked. She came over and scolded me and said, "Mark, don't ever lock Mommy in her room again." I apparently claimed black and blue that I hadn't stopped watching the TV. And Mom believed me. About this time, she decided enough was enough, so she approached the local pastor to ask what to do. He suggested 2 options. 1, ignore it and hope it went away. Or 2, play loud hymns and read Bible verses to try and anger whatever was there into leaving. He warned, though, that doing this could anger them and that they might throw stuff around. My great-grandmother, who was a very religious person, walked into the rumpus room one day and told my mother, "There are evil, evil faces looking at me and leering at me down there," after walking downstairs to get me a toy. A pastor later confirmed that, "Take it or leave it, and you might think I'm mad, but you have 2 to 3 demonic manifestations/entities residing in the back of your house." That was the last straw. Mom packed up our stuff and started looking for another house immediately. She and my dad were divorcing at this stage, so he was gone frequently. But this wouldn't be the evil's last parting shot. My mother, about a few days out from moving, went to check on my sister, who was now 2, while she was asleep in the top-story nursery, now her room. On checking her cot, she found it, to her terror, completely empty. The window above it, and it was one of those old design heavy horizontal sliding windows with a vertical latch halfway up one side, was wide open, and the fly screen behind it had its rubber seal hanging in the breeze, with the flap of fly screen swinging in the breeze. Underneath her window was an annex over the back door, which now had a huge dent in the fiberglass, and its supports were broken. There was my sister crawling around the backyard, with the dog playing beside her. Mom freaked out and rang the doctor immediately, who came and checked her out. She was fine, but had a bit of a concussion. When Mom, Dad, he was home at the time, and the doctor asked what happened, she exclaimed, "Doggy, down, down, down." Evidently she had fallen, although falling out of a window that she couldn't climb out of, nor reach, nor open, seems a bit too convenient. Out the window, and had seen the dog running around the backyard beneath her. Needless to say, that was the last day we spent in that house. What did you think of these terrific real-life horror stories? Comment or email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. As we turn down the lights on this episode, make plans to join me next time as we continue exploring our strange and scary world. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Tap the banner or visit usaa.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number, 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number, save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.